My beloved child, there is something unusual in the air around you at this very moment, something that has been hidden behind silence, behind hesitation, behind long pauses and unfinished thoughts is beginning to move, and the reason you were guided to this message today is because a conversation took place that changed more than anyone realizes. Last night, while the world seemed quiet and ordinary, your special person was carrying a weight inside their heart, a weight they had tried to ignore. A feeling they had tried to explain away, a connection they had tried to understand using logic when logic was never enough. For a long time they kept these emotions locked away. They smiled when they needed to smile. They stayed busy when they needed distractions. They convinced themselves that time would make everything easier. But something unexpected happened. The feelings did not disappear. They grew. And last night, for the first time in a very long while, they stopped pretending that those feelings were not there. What happened next may surprise you. Because this was not a random conversation. This was not casual small talk. This was not one of those moments that comes and goes without meaning. No. This was the kind of conversation people remember years later. The kind that begins quietly but changes everything. Your special person found themselves sitting with someone they trust. Someone who has seen them through different seasons of life, someone who knows when they are hiding something. At first, the conversation was about ordinary things. Daily events. Responsibilities. Plans. Random moments from the week. But then their friend noticed something. They noticed a change. A different energy. A distant look in their eyes. A smile that appeared at unexpected moments. And finally the question came. What's really going on with you? For a second, your special person froze. Because they knew exactly what the question was asking. And they knew exactly who was on their mind. You. The room became quiet. Not because there was nothing to say. But because there was too much. Feelings they had never spoken aloud. Thoughts they had replayed countless times. Questions they had asked themselves over and over again. Their friend waited patiently. And then something remarkable happened. The walls started coming down. Slowly. Carefully. One piece at a time. Your special person looked away for a moment. Took a deep breath. And finally spoke words that had been trapped inside their heart. They said, I don't understand why I can't stop thinking about them. The moment those words left their mouth, everything changed. Because speaking the truth makes it real. Keeping a feeling hidden allows uncertainty to survive. But speaking it aloud gives it power. Their friend immediately knew this was serious. This wasn't admiration. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't a passing interest. There was something deeper happening. Something your special person could no longer deny. And what happened next is where the story becomes even more interesting. Their friend asked another question. A simple question. But one that struck directly at the center of everything. What makes them different? The answer did not come immediately. Because some truths are difficult to explain. How do you describe a connection that doesn't fit into ordinary words? How do you explain why one person remains in your thoughts when countless others have come and gone? How do you describe a feeling that keeps returning no matter how much time passes? Your special person searched for the right words. And then they began speaking. Not quickly. Not carelessly, but honestly. They talked about the way you make them feel. They talked about moments that seemed small but never left their memory. They talked about things they never thought mattered until they realized they remembered every detail. The sound of your voice. The energy you carry. The way certain memories appear unexpectedly during the day. The strange comfort they feel whenever they think about you. Their friend listened carefully. And the more your special person spoke, the more obvious the truth became. These feelings were not fading. They were growing stronger. Much stronger. In fact, the friend eventually smiled and interrupted them. Do you realize how much you talk about this person? The question caught them off guard. Because they had not noticed it themselves. But suddenly they saw it. Every story led back to you. Every memory connected back to you. Every emotion somehow pointed back to you. And for the first time, the realization became impossible to ignore. You were no longer just someone crossing their mind occasionally. You had become part of their everyday thoughts. Part of their future questions. Part of the possibilities they secretly imagined. Yet even then, they still held back one final truth. One truth they were almost afraid to admit. Because admitting it would change everything. Their friend could sense it. There was still something left unsaid. Something bigger. Something hidden beneath all the other words. And so they asked one final question. A question that filled the room with silence. A question that made your special person's heart race. The friend looked directly at them and said, "So what are you really trying to tell me?" The answer almost came out immediately. But fear stopped it. Doubt stopped it. The uncertainty that appears whenever someone stands on the edge of complete honesty stopped it. For several moments they said nothing. And then something inside them shifted. Because there comes a point where truth becomes impossible to hide. A point where the heart grows tired of carrying secrets. A point where honesty feels lighter than silence. That point arrived last night. And when it did, your special person finally spoke the words that changed the entire conversation. Words that left their friend completely speechless. Words that revealed what had truly been happening inside their heart all along. And what they confessed next was far deeper than anyone expected. The moment those words left their lips, the atmosphere changed instantly. Their friend leaned forward. The room felt different. And your special person knew there was no taking those words back. Because the secret they had protected for so long was finally about to be revealed. And what happened after that confession is something you need to hear. Because it explains why the energy around this connection feels different today. It explains why certain pieces are beginning to move into place. And it explains why last night may become one of the most important turning points in this entire story. But before we uncover exactly what they confessed, and before we reveal the response that stunned even them, there is another piece of this story you must understand first. Because the truth that emerged next was not just emotional. It was unexpected. And once it was spoken aloud, nothing felt the same anymore. A hidden truth was finally standing at the edge of the light. The silence that followed felt longer than it really was. Your special person sat there staring at the floor for a moment, almost as if they were deciding whether to keep protecting their secret or finally release it into the world. Their friend waited. No interruptions. No pressure. Just patience. because they could sense that something important was about to be said. Then your special person slowly lifted their eyes and spoke. "I think they mean more to me than I ever planned." The words came out softly. But the impact was enormous. For a moment their friend simply stared. Not because the confession was shocking, but because it confirmed what had been hiding beneath every story, every memory, and every emotion your special person had shared. The truth had finally taken shape. And once it appeared, it could no longer be ignored. Their friend leaned back and smiled. Not the smile of someone hearing gossip. The smile of someone watching another person finally stop running from their own heart. "How long have you known?" The question landed directly where it needed to. Your special person paused. Because the answer wasn't simple. Had they known for weeks? Months? Longer? The reality was that the feeling had grown so gradually that they couldn't identify the exact moment it began. It was like watching a sunrise. You don't always notice the first ray of light. But suddenly the entire sky is bright. That was what happened. Little moments had become meaningful. Small conversations had become memorable. Ordinary interactions had become unforgettable. And before they realized it, thinking about you had become part of their routine. Their friend listened carefully. Then asked another question. A question your special person wasn't prepared for. If they walked away tomorrow, how would you feel? The room became completely still. Because some questions reveal truths that even we try to hide from ourselves. Your special person immediately imagined it. A future without hearing from you. Without seeing your name. Without wondering how your day was going. Without imagining future possibilities. And suddenly something inside them tightened. The answer arrived before they could stop it. It would hurt. The words escaped naturally. Honestly. Without hesitation. And the moment they said it, the realization became undeniable. This was real. Far more real than they had allowed themselves to believe. Their friend nodded slowly. Because they had just witnessed something important. Not a crush. Not curiosity. Not wishful thinking. Something deeper. Something lasting. But what happened next surprised even your special person. Their friend began describing changes they had noticed. Changes that had been obvious from the outside. You talk differently now. You smile differently. You seem hopeful about things you used to ignore. You mention them more than you realize. Each observation landed like a puzzle piece finding its place. Your special person listened quietly. Because hearing someone else describe the transformation made it impossible to deny. The connection had already changed them. Even if they never intended it to. Even if they never planned for it. Even if they tried to resist it. And then came a revelation neither of them expected. Their friends suddenly laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. Because they had finally figured something out. "I think you've been trying to hide this from yourself." The sentence hit harder than any question. Because deep down your special person knew there was truth in it. They had spent so much time analyzing every feeling. Questioning every emotion. Searching for certainty. That they had missed the obvious answer sitting directly in front of them. Sometimes the heart understands something long before the mind catches up. And last night, the mind finally began to catch up. The conversation continued. The honesty grew stronger. The walls grew weaker. And soon your special person started sharing things they had never said aloud before. They talked about moments that replayed unexpectedly. Specific memories. Specific words. Specific feelings. Tiny details most people would forget. Yet somehow every detail connected to you remained crystal clear. Their friend noticed this immediately. Because people don't remember details that way unless someone truly matters. And that realization created another wave of emotion. One your special person could no longer escape. Then came the question that changed everything. The friend looked directly at them and asked, "So what are you going to do about it?" No answer came. Not at first. Because this question wasn't about feelings. It was about action. Feelings can stay hidden. Action changes reality. And suddenly your special person found themselves standing between two paths. One path was silence. The familiar path. The safe path. The path where nothing changes. The other path was courage. Uncertainty. Possibility. The path where something beautiful might finally begin. They didn't know which path they would choose. Not yet. But for the first time, they were seriously thinking about it. And that alone was a major shift. Because before last night, the idea felt distant. Now it felt possible. Their friend could see the conflict happening inside them. The hope. The fear. The excitement. The uncertainty. All existing together at the same time. Then their friend said something unexpected. Something that remained in your special person's mind long after the conversation ended. If someone can occupy this much space in your heart, maybe they're there for a reason. Those words echoed through the silence. Again and again. Maybe they're there for a reason. Not because of coincidence. Not because of timing. Not because of chance. But because certain connections arrive with purpose. And when those connections appear, they refuse to be forgotten. Your special person didn't answer immediately. They simply sat there thinking. Thinking about you. Thinking about everything that had happened. Thinking about all the moments that suddenly made more sense than ever before. And then, just when the conversation seemed ready to end, the most surprising part happened. Their friend asked one final question. A question so direct that your special person almost laughed from nervousness. A question that brought the entire conversation to a standstill. The friend looked at them carefully and said, "Are you falling for them?" The room became silent again. Not because there was no answer. But because there was. A very clear answer. And for the first time all night, your special person didn't try to run from it. They didn't change the subject. They didn't hide behind uncertainty. They didn't pretend not to know. Instead they sat there quietly. A small smile appearing on their face. A smile that revealed more than words ever could. And in that moment, the answer became obvious. Not only to their friend, but to themselves. Yet what they said next was even more powerful. Because it was the sentence that finally revealed the deepest truth they had been carrying. A sentence that transformed the entire conversation. A sentence their friend would never forget. And once those words were spoken, the future of this connection suddenly looked very different than it had only hours before. The confession was complete. But the story was only beginning. The atmosphere shifted the moment that question settled into the room. Are you falling for them? Those words lingered in the air. Your special person didn't answer right away. Not because they didn't know, but because they finally did. For so long they had searched for certainty. They had examined every feeling, every memory, every possibility. Yet now, with one simple question placed before them, all the confusion seemed to disappear. The answer had been quietly waiting inside their heart the entire time. Their friend watched carefully. No pressure. No judgment. Just curiosity. And then your special person smiled. A genuine smile. The kind that appears when someone finally stops fighting the truth. A smile that carried relief. A smile that carried hope. A smile that carried something even deeper. Finally, they spoke. I think I've been falling for them longer than I realized. The room became completely still. Because once those words were spoken, there was no hiding anymore. The secret had a name now. The feeling had a direction. The uncertainty had become understanding. Their friend looked at them and nodded slowly. Not surprised. Not shocked. Almost as if they had known all along. And perhaps they had. Sometimes the people around us see our feelings before we do. They notice the changes. The little signs. The subtle shifts. The things we overlook because we're standing too close to our own story. Their friend leaned forward. Then said something unexpected. You know what's interesting? Your special person looked up. What? Their friend smiled. You never talk about what you want. You only talk about what you feel. The sentence landed deeply. Because it was true. Throughout the entire conversation, your special person had described emotions. Memories. Thoughts. Connections. But they had never allowed themselves to imagine what could actually happen. They had been focused on protecting themselves from disappointment. Protecting themselves from uncertainty. Protecting themselves from vulnerability. Yet in doing so, they had never fully admitted what they truly wanted. The realization was powerful. For a few moments they simply sat there thinking. Then their friend asked another question. A question that seemed simple on the surface, but carried enormous meaning underneath. If everything worked out perfectly, what would happen next? The moment those words were spoken, your special person's heart began racing. Because suddenly they weren't being asked about fear. They weren't being asked about doubt. They weren't being asked about obstacles. They were being asked about possibility. And possibility can be far more revealing than fear. At first they hesitated. Then slowly, they allowed themselves to imagine. Not the worst-case scenario. Not the complicated scenario. The best one. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped focusing on what could go wrong. And started imagining what could go right. Their eyes softened. Their expression changed. And their friend noticed immediately. Because hope has a way of transforming a person's face. Then your special person quietly said something that revealed just how much you truly mean to them. I just want the chance to see where this could go. No dramatic speech. No grand declaration. Just honesty. Pure honesty. The kind that carries more power than any rehearsed confession ever could. Their friend smiled again. Because those words revealed everything. Not possession. Not fantasy. Not unrealistic expectations. Just a sincere desire to explore what might be possible. And that sincerity made the moment even more meaningful. The conversation could have ended there. But it didn't. Because there was still one final layer of truth waiting to emerge. One final realization that had been sitting beneath everything else. And strangely enough, it came from a memory. A memory your special person hadn't thought about in weeks. As they sat there talking, something suddenly resurfaced. A small moment involving you. A moment that seemed insignificant when it happened. Yet now, it felt incredibly important. They remembered the way they felt afterward. The way their mood changed. The way their thoughts kept returning to it. The way they carried that memory far longer than they should have. And suddenly they understood why. Because the heart often recognizes significance before the mind does. Their friend listened as they described the memory. Then laughed softly. Not mockingly. Warmly. Knowingly. And said, "Do you realize you've remembered that detail perfectly?" Your special person blinked. Because it was true. The memory remained vivid. Clear. Untouched by time. And that realization revealed something else. You had become part of their emotional landscape. Part of the moments they returned to when nobody was watching. Part of the thoughts that appeared unexpectedly during quiet hours. Part of the future they had secretly started imagining. Even if they never admitted it before. Then something happened that neither of them expected. The conversation stopped feeling like a confession. It started feeling like a breakthrough. For the first time all night, your special person wasn't defending their feelings. They weren't questioning them. They weren't doubting them. They were simply accepting them. And acceptance brought peace. A kind of peace they hadn't felt in a long time. Their friend could see it. The tension was fading. The uncertainty was fading. Something clearer was taking its place.